Well, we've had a bit of weak tropical thunderstorm activity here in Texas. This is kind of a look at things about 30 minutes ago. You can see a lot of anvil debris up above us, some elevated showers there, and just a bunch of clouds of different layers here. We're starting about a minute earlier than usual. I'm going to shift stuff to about 8 o'clock. That's going to be our new start time, so let's check out the weather, what's happening this Saturday. Hopefully you're all having a good weekend here. We've kind of drifted back to kind of a boring pattern. We have a southeasterly flow here in Texas once again, and that's originating from the interior area of the U.S. So we're pulling in a little bit of haze from the eastern U.S. And of course, we do have that area of higher precipitable water over East Texas and Louisiana. So that's another bit of moisture continuing to work slowly eastward. And that other bit of moisture we had the previous day, it's shifted out towards the Cap Rock. So there it is, right there between Abilene and Wichita Falls, and maybe some of it right there around Woodward. I'm going to try something very different here. This will help you understand the weather across the country a little bit better. We're going to go to the GFS. One thing we haven't really focused on too much is the big picture. Let me shrink this window down just a little bit. Okay, let's see here. Now, I want you to take a look just strictly at the surface pressure. That's going to be these black lines right here. Don't worry about the precipitable water field here. So what do we have? We have a low pressure over Alberta. If you examine the field very carefully, you'll pick out a high pressure area here. These model output fields don't produce the lows and highs very well. They don't put the markings there all the time, so you have to kind of read into the data some. Let's see here. So there's high pressure there, and we got to have another mark across the southeastern U.S., so that's just part of the ridge extending down into Arkansas, Tennessee. And then off to, in the Atlantic, we have a Pacific high. So these are the three main dominant weather systems affecting the area today, or affecting North America. You could probably throw in a fourth one here. This is a heat low over Arizona. So basically all the wind flow we have is dominated. Well, if we want to throw in one more, there's actually a high pressure area off to the top of the chart, way off here. So basically these 4 or 5 weather systems are controlling the wind field across most of the U.S. So if you're in South Dakota, you're being influenced by this low pressure to the northwest, and air is flowing from this ridge, which is part of the Bermuda High. So that kind of gives you your dominant flow across North America. So as you might have guessed, with this low pressure here in Alberta, that's probably the leading edge of this new polar air mass coming into the Pacific Northwest. See that northerly flow coming onto the coast here? That's a definite change from yesterday when we had 94-degree readings out there in the Pacific. Let's check that out. So there's the temperatures, and you can see 73, 69 there at Everett, 75 at Portland, so that's a big change from yesterday when we had 90s out in the area. So as we look at this chart, think back to that big picture that I was showing you earlier. That's a good way to quickly get a handle on what's going on. So we know that this area here is under northwesterly flow from the Pacific. We know that there's a low pressure area up in Alberta. We don't have the plots up in Canada for some reason, but we know it's up there. And we can kind of assume that there's a cold front trailing down south from that in this direction. So how far east or west is that front? Well, we have to look very carefully at the data. And one thing I want to emphasize here is to very you want to really use your imagination when you're looking at these plots. Like, you want to really put yourself there, down on the ground, experiencing, like, maybe, let's see, Pasco, I think this is Pasco, Washington. They're showing, let's see, 88 degrees. So if we put ourselves down there on the ground, we see that we have probably partly cloudy skies. We know the winds are out of the west. It's 88 degrees, so it's still pretty warm, but we know that we're bringing in air from the Pacific. So we can assume that we've had a change of air mass, but we haven't completely moved in the cool air yet. So the cold front is probably just only recently passed. We have 90 here at Lewiston. So the cold front is probably not too far to the east. 86 there at Burns, 87. So we can probably put that front maybe back here. Some analysts may put it here. But technically we should keep it close to where the air mass changes, where it changes from cool temperatures to warm temperatures, and that's actually way back here. On the other hand, there's a whole lot of adiabatic heating out here, so that kind of really murks things up quite a bit. So I can't really tell you exactly where the front is. I would have to look at temperature trends over time, look at the wind shifts and that kind of thing. Let's check out weather in the southwest U.S. They're, of course, very far south of the front. What are they under the influence of? Well, let's think back to that big picture. For those of you coming in late, there's that big picture right there. Let me reset that to 0 hours. The big picture was low pressure in Alberta, low pressure, heat low in Arizona, high pressure over the northeast U.S. with a bit of a ridge over the southeast U.S., high pressure off the west coast. So let's keep that in mind and go to the small scale chart. So what's influencing our weather here? That's going to be the heat low over Arizona. And to a certain extent, there's going to be some influence from high pressure off the coast here. We normally see that in late summer and early fall. We'll have an onshore component like that because you have that very cool oceanic air. It wants to blow inland, it's very dense, and it gets swept up into the heat lows that we have inland. So we've got a westerly component across most of California there. But the actual sea breeze has only made it into the San Diego area, maybe part of Los Angeles, hasn't quite gotten into the deserts yet. So, but you know, that's pretty normal this time of year. Heat low here, so we're going to have a bit of a monsoon flowing in Arizona like that. And as we go west into Texas, we get under the influence of that ridge that's way off in Tennessee, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So hopefully that's making a little bit of sense there. It's helping you to put things together. So let's switch to the southeast U.S. What's controlling the weather here? Well, of course, that's going to be that ridge that's up in Tennessee, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So any air that we have across the southeast U.S. is probably going to be blowing out of that ridge like that. And maybe coming out of the Bermuda High. We didn't quite get that far east, but we know that this time of year we usually have a large dominant Bermuda High out in the Atlantic. So we have easterly flow here, and probably some easterly waves moving through here somewhere across the Gulf of Mexico. And let's switch up into the northeast. What do we have going on here? Well, remember that we have high pressure across the northeast. In fact, I think it was way up here. And I keep getting texts one after the other. What's going on here? Okay. I'll get back to that shortly. So look at those temperatures we have in Maine, 59 there. We've got some very cool weather up there in Bangor and Caribou, 61. That's very cool. So we know that that's under the influence of cool Canadian air that's probably just sinking southeast. And then on the backside here, warm tropical air flowing up from the south. Okay, hopefully I haven't bothered you or bored you all too much, but I pulled up here's something a little bit different. This is the Worldview earthdata.nasa.gov site. Let me show you the URL in case you want to pull that up sometime. So there's worldview.earthdata.nasa.gov. This is polar orbiter satellite data that comes out every day. This is about 12 or 1 o'clock, and you can see here in Texas, look at all that tropical air. Lots and lots of cumulus. Austin is going to be here, Dallas is about right here, and Houston is there. So you can see that first wave of clouds. And I'm going to silence my phone because this is getting crazy. Okay. Fun dealing with all these modern conveniences here. Anyway, okay, we should be able to continue now. So there's that first band of clouds and showers, and here's the second one out in West Texas. And you can see there's this fair area in between. So Dallas is probably not seeing a whole lot in the way of rain. I-35 area, the same thing. Let's switch out to the west. We can pick up the monsoon in New Mexico. Lots of cumulonimbus anvils out there. Then we start getting into some of the dry air. Remember the heat low over Arizona right there. So pretty far out to the east, we're tapping a lot of moisture coming in from the Gulf. As we get closer to the interior of Arizona, we start pulling in a lot drier air that's been sitting over the desert southwest, and the source region of that is basically just the desert. But I'll show you this one other cool thing here in the northwest. Look at that change up here. We've got a lot of post-frontal air across Seattle. And as you get into Idaho, where we have very strong gusty winds, look at that forest fire right there. This is in Oregon. I'm not sure exactly where that is. I think that's probably north of Burns, maybe. This one is north of Boise. This is another forest fire there. So low relative humidity, very strong westerly winds. That's bad news for the forests out there. So this is very useful for firefighting purposes here. You can pretty much pin down, this is 0.25 kilometer imagery resolution, so 250 meters there. You can just pick out exactly where the fires are. Sometimes they show up on weather radar. Sometimes they'll show up on visible imagery from the GO satellites, but you can definitely pick them up on these polar orbiters quite a bit. Okay, let's see. We're running 15 minutes in. What do we want to cover? The Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico looks pretty dead, except for that one tropical depression working its way eastward. That'll be in the Gulf in a couple of days. So what are we looking at for our forecast? Let's check out our 500 millibar chart, because that gives us an idea of where the subsidence is affecting the air here in Texas and across the rest of the U.S. We'd like to look at the changes in the height field. See if I can get this going here. Okay, here we go. So we start out the 500 millibar chart with high pressure over Virginia. And we notice that, let's see here, that tends to fizzle and go away. Even though we don't have a closed contour over the southeast U.S., you can definitely see cyclonic flow. So you have to use all the tools that are available to you. In this case, we're using the wind plots. So this is painting out an anticyclone across Missouri. This is going to be about Tuesday here. So we can see that we have a closed high affecting Texas, Louisiana. So that's building in, and that's going to probably start shutting things down a little bit going into midweek. So can you pick out now where the high pressure is aloft? It's going to be over the southern U.S. Do you see it there? Well, we have a calm wind plot right there over Little Rock. We have westerly winds here in Missouri, and we have easterly winds along the Texas coast. So if we plot streamlines, they're going to look something like that. So you can see that the upper high is starting to shift westward onto the Texas area. So that's going to continue to shut things down going into Wednesday, which is what this is. And you can see that there's this ridge aloft over the central U.S. So we're going to have kind of a down period about midweek. And then, as we get into Thursday, you can see we come under westerly flow. Easterly flow sinks down into Mexico, so the center of the high pressure is around the Big Bend area, Texas. And then going into Friday, let's see, what do we got here? High pressure still kind of centered across Texas. So we're going to be really fighting to get precip as we get into the end of next week. And then it looks like towards the following week, getting into September 6th, September 7th, it's like more high pressure, so that's not very good as far as warm weather. Not going to like that. The main jet stream way up to the north there in the Dakotas, so looks like it's going to stay warm for a while. And let's take a quick peek at the precipitable water, because if we build up enough precipitable water, that'll help activate the sea breeze, and that can give us some low percentage chances of rain here in Texas. So for Monday, we're looking at just kind of this continuation of precipitable water building into Texas, higher values. There's one glob here in the eastern Gulf. It looks like that heads back eastward, back in the Atlantic. Kind of a stagnant weather pattern. Southeast flow bringing up moisture into the North Plains. Things stay cool in the northeast over the next week, it looks like. And then what do we have for the following weekend on the 3rd? Not a whole lot. The main surface system is up in the Dakotas, basically moving eastward across the Great Lakes, so that's not far south enough to help Texas. So it looks pretty boring for the next week or so. But hey, look at that little hurricane there off the coast of Baja California. So that'll be one thing that's interesting. And here's something else coming in. Look at this here. That may be a little bit too far east, but we're going to have to kind of probably watch the Carolinas in case that pans out. This is getting way out there, September 11th. That could be interesting. Look at that. The model is going for 964 millibars, and it looks like it's bringing that towards Virginia and North Carolina. So that may not pan out exactly as it's shown here, but we will, of course, want to keep an eye on that because that looks pretty significant. And the peak of tropical season is September 8th, September 9th. So that's something to watch for. Anyway, I appreciate you watching. Man, we ran 21 minutes, got 11 people on, so that's awesome. That's pretty awesome. I appreciate you joining in, and we'll see you tomorrow night.